It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is Lindsay Jacks. She is the director of Lights Out Baltimore, and I'm so glad she's here. We're talking about one of my favorite subjects, birds, and Lindsay knows quite a bit about birds. She is actually, the full-time job is at the aquarium. You do what?
I'm an aviculturist, which is a fancy term for bird keeper at the National Aquarium in the Australia section, so I take care of all of the birds there in Australia and our gray-headed flying foxes, which are bats.
And this, again, is not in Australia. This is in Baltimore. So go visit the birds at the National Aquarium in Baltimore. You'll likely see Lindsay.
Yep. I do also keeper chats. We have a tawny frogmouth, who's a lovely bird. And if you don't know what bird that is, because we don't live in Australia, you should definitely look it up.
Okay, tell me what it looks like now. Now I'm interested.
He looks similar to an owl, but he doesn't have a hook on his bill and he doesn't have talons, but he is short and squatty with large eyes. He has a very broad bill, so he kind of looks like a Muppet mouth in a way, but he is completely camouflaged so he can blend in with his environment. And so he does have patterns like an owl.
How cool is that? And it's a raptor?
It is not a raptor, but he does eat large insects because he's nocturnal. So he flies at night to catch large insects with that large mouth, and it's a tawny frog mouth.
And does he stay nocturnal when he's taken out of his...
Yeah, so we take him out during the day. He is somewhat awake, during the day because we'll be in his area at night taking care of him, and during the day taking care of him, cleaning back there. But I'm 100% sure that he is much more active at night. We just don't have a camera on him.
We're going to talk about keeping birds alive, specifically migrating birds. And migrating birds come and go basically 2 times a year.
Yeah, so the majority of birds that migrate, they migrate from like North America all the way down to South America twice a year, and, from South America up. And that is spring and fall. Spring is usually April, May. Fall migration is September until the end of November. Fall migration is a longer period to allow birds to move from their Arctic breeding grounds or up North America, U.S., down to South America and Central America, or to the southern U.S. And as these birds are flying over large cities, they're attracted to the white light that we have here, or the bright yellow lights, and anything that's white or yellow, and it's because they migrate by moon and stars. So as these beautiful neotropical birds that you're trying to go and see in local forest and parks right now, as they fly over their pathway, over their flyway route, as we call it, they just get attracted to the white light and they go into the city area. And unfortunately, the city area and any urban area is not very safe for them because of all the large amount of glass that we have.
So hence Lights Out. And there are Lights Out chapters. How many of them are there?
I believe that there are over 20 right now. And every couple years and every year, there's a new one popping up. Philadelphia just added one 2 years ago. So they are popping up in several cities. And while we encourage Lights Out, just to make that clear, we're not talking about security lights. We're not talking about lights that need to stay on for safety measures in cities. We're talking about entire buildings, 20-floor buildings that have every interior light on, so that they can create a skyline or an aesthetic look for their building.
So Lights Out Baltimore was born when?
In 2008, and since then we've collected over 3,000 birds dead, but we have rescued over 800. So we're almost at about out of 1 every 3 birds that we find on our route early in the morning, starting at 5 a.m., very early.
You do it every day?
We do it every day during migration season.
How many of you are there?
There's about 20. So if you would like to join us, we definitely need the help.
And where can people find out more information about Lights Out Baltimore?
You can go to our webpage at lightsoutbaltimore.org.
So the idea behind Lights Out nationwide, is it international at this point, or is it just U.S.?
It is international. There are several Facebook pages that are created about Lights Out International. So when I see, pictures over in Asia of someone that's doing a Lights Out route there, their birds are obviously much more exotic and elaborate, but they also have the same problem. Any bird that migrates a distance is going to have trouble migrating over a large city.
Homeowners can help.
Yeah, so they estimate that over a majority of the birds that are hitting windows that are dying or impacted dominated by residential homes. And that is a study through Scott Loss and Pete Mara of Migratory Bird Center, and several universities across the U.S. are doing studies. So over half of the collisions that are happening and deaths that are happening to birds, which is up to 1 billion per year, if we factor in all of the residential homes, we're looking at 1.3 billion. So they estimate anywhere from 2 to 10 birds die per year at a residential home. And I always hear all the time, and it's completely common to hear, oh, I don't see any birds, or I see them hit and then they fly off. Just because we saw that bird fly off does not mean that they succumb later on to injuries through head trauma, any type of lung issues, wing, legs, anything that can ultimately lead to their death. Also, we have so many, feral cats that may be around, or a squirrel, or if you're in the city, you're going to have a rat or a gull that can take that bird as soon as it hits your home. So there are several things that homeowners can do, which I always encourage. The number one thing to do, it's the easiest, it's the most inexpensive thing to do. So easy. Move your bird feeder about 2 feet from your window. The closer the bird feeder is to your window, the least amount of momentum that the bird can hit when they're sitting at your feeder and then they look over at your window and they see a reflection of the tree behind them. Mm-hmm. They may hit your window, but they did not gather enough momentum to kill themselves. Also, just moving it closer, one, you're going to get better photos if you like to photograph birds. And two, if they're flying from like a tree across your yard, if they see the reflection of the window, they'll start flying that way. But if they see a feeder, they'll stop and have a destination point. So
move it closer to the
Move
window.
it closer. Most people have the perception to move it farther away. Another perception that most people have is that it's the sky rise, like tall high-rise buildings that are killing birds with the collisions. It's not. It is generally, we say it is the first 30 feet from the ground up, because as the birds fly into the city area, they perch at a tree, they're eating, they're foraging, then they're like, okay, it's time to take off. I'm going to go to this other tree. And then as they take their lift off, that's when they hit the building, and it's usually straight across from it or as they're lifting up. So it is generally the first 30 feet of a building is the threat factor from the ground.
Interesting. All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, more things we can do to help birds stay alive. I'm Donna Cole. This is the 1430 Connection. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is Lindsay Jacks. She is the director of Lights Out Baltimore. They are encouraging building owners, commercial building owners, to keep the lights out that are not necessary in buildings. Don't worry about creating those beautiful skylines at night. They're killing birds, especially twice a year.
It's spring and fall migration. So spring is April and May generally, and that's pretty much a strict timeline. And then fall migration starts usually it can start in mid-August, but we always like to say September and October. So turning your lights out 4 months out of the year can greatly save our birds.
So while we're on the tail end of that now, for the fall migration, there is nothing written in stone that some birds might not get that memo, and they're still going to be migrating through, and especially with climate not being what it was and strictly turning into fall when it's supposed to, and some warmer days, birds are migrating maybe a little bit later now.
They are. So now we're seeing birds go well into November, until the end of November, and possibly into the beginning of December. Also, the majority of the birds are flying around the Arctic area down to South America right now, so they're passing through us. But then there are also birds that are in like the southern U.S. area that are now moving up into cooler climates. So we have juncos that are coming into this area.
Saw one yesterday.
Yes. So they are coming into the area, and they're also birds, just because they're migrating a different route, they're still coming into this area and they're hitting glass buildings because of it.
Also discussing how we as homeowners can keep our birds safe. Lindsay just gave us a bunch of great tips, including moving feeders closer to the house. I always thought you're supposed to keep them a little bit further away from the house. It used to be said keep them, 35 feet, but not everybody.
Yeah. Not everyone has a yard that is that far away. So the general rule is the closer that you can bring the feeder to your house, the less momentum the bird has hits a window, and you're going to get better photos and a better vantage point of looking at those birds. Also, the number one reason, it's going to save their life.
we also can put things on the window.
Yeah, so you can use decals. You can also just make your windows dirty. The general rule, and this is what we call the 2x4 rule, it has to be every 2 inches vertical and every 4 inches horizontal.
Which means?
So it means that every 2x4 inches, there has to be something there. So the best thing to do is if you can go online and go to American Bird Conservancy and get tape, or you can, it's called ABC tape, or what I suggest is called Bird Savers. So if you go to birdsavers.com, it's beautiful. It's parachute cord, and it creates a horizontal line, and then below it, it does vertical lines all the way down. And what is great about this, it goes on the exterior of your window. You can just put it up during migration months if you want to do that, or you can take it down at any time that you want. So we always encourage, the majority of the window collisions that you're going to have at your home, at your feeder, is during migration season. You could have them any time of the year because birds do not perceive glass just like you and I. They don't see it, they perceive it differently than you and I. So because of that, you can leave it up year round, or you can just put the Bird Savers up, which is like a cord, hangs on the exterior, or you can take it down anytime you want.
How noticeable is this to the homeowners from inside?
From the inside, it's a really great view, and to me, it is better to have that where it's not really it is right up against the glass, but it's not attached to the glass, so that you don't have like a decal, and then when you take those decals off, you have like the prints kind of, and then perhaps a sticky film. ABC bird tape, if you do buy that just during migration months, it does not leave a sticky film, so you can take it off afterwards. It is easy to remove. There are also different films that you can add. Many people have the perception that you can just put up a giant raptor silhouette, and that is going to solve the problem. That is only going to solve the problem if the bird is flying towards exactly that one point where the silhouette is. It's every 2x4 inches. You have to have something there to visually make a barrier on the window for the bird. So I always recommend Bird Savers. You can purchase them from their website. You just measure your window, or if you want to save money, if you want to make it like an Eagle Scout project or a citizen science project, they will mail you the kit and you can make your own.
Wow, that's cool. Very interesting. Who knew?
Yes. Yeah. And their Bird Savers has been approved and tested by American Bird Conservancy.
All right, we're going to take another short break. When we come back, more about, is it every bird that hits windows? Are they certain type of birds? We know they're migrating birds for the most part. Small birds, big birds. I'm Donna Cole. This is the 1430 Connection. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm in the studio today with Lindsay Jacks. She is the director of Lights Out Baltimore. We're talking about keeping birds, yes, alive. One of my favorite topics. We know that migrating birds hit windows. We know that migrating birds hit residential windows and commercial windows. Lights Out Baltimore is encouraging everyone to turn lights off that aren't necessary at night to keep these birds safe. Birds fly all night long.
They do. So they migrate. Most people don't realize this. They're migrating at night because there are less predators. So these very small warblers, like those beautiful common yellowthroats, to your summer tanagers, your scarlet tanagers, these are birds that are migrating at night to avoid predators because they're the most colorful. So they definitely attract more predators. So, they have a better chance of surviving if they migrate at night.
The majority of birds you're finding in Baltimore dead, what are they?
Oh, they're beautiful birds. They're the birds that you want to see when you go birding. So we have found everything from a mourning warbler to Cape May warblers, common yellowthroats, which is one of our common birds, Lincoln sparrows, Savannah sparrows. Last year we found a yellow rail on our route. It was alive. We rescued it, and it had a chance, to have a second chance at life because we rescued it from downtown. A yellow rail has not been documented in Baltimore City except for in 1893. Wow. And they didn't have the photograph then. So we have the photograph, the bird went to rehab, and then it was re-released. Nice. So we are finding rarities. We are finding the birds that when you go out on your weekend or when migration comes, all the birders are flocking to these areas. These are the birds we're finding.
How about the big birds?
We are getting hawks. We get Cooper's hawks. We recently had a red-tailed hawk that hit a building downtown near a federal building. We're lucky the facilities people heard about it. They went down, they boxed it up, and they called us because they have our number. So that bird is in rehab and getting ready to be released. So we do find large birds. We're getting raptors, peregrine falcons that are breeding downtown on the Transamerica building. Some of their offspring in the past and a couple of seasons ago did strike buildings and die from that. So it's not just that teeny tiny small bird that you're going to go see. It is important raptors. We also get shorebirds. We get American woodcocks, little timber doodles, as you may want to call them. We're getting at the tail end of migration. At the end of November, we're getting woodcocks. We just rescued one this morning, which is I woke up very early. I didn't do the walk, but I transported the bird to our rehabber at Phoenix Wildlife Center and then came here for the interview. So we do find shorebirds, large birds, small birds.
Young, is this a factor with, you said, some of the hawks, the younger generation?
Hawks are generally, the ones that we typically find are juvenile. So we're finding juvenile Cooper's hawks. We're finding juvenile red-tailed hawks.
They just don't know the way of the world yet.
Correct. And even if they become adults, they still may never because they don't perceive glass like you or I. The birds, though, that we find during the fall, the majority of them, I wouldn't even say the majority, about half of them are young because they're making their first migration. But typically, 2/3 of all of our birds that we have found, and that's in our studies since 2008, and these are also national studies, over 2/3 of the birds that are being found by bird collisions are adult birds. So that means reproductive age. So we're not just talking about, we lost, 500 birds this year in Baltimore City.
It could be twice, three times, four times.
Yes, because those are the reproductive birds. So it just gets deeper, yes.
Your territory is just Baltimore City.
Yes.
So what do we do about encouraging some of this on the outskirts? Are we going to see Lights Out Annapolis at some point?
Oh, I would love to see Lights Out Annapolis. It's a city problem, but it's also, it maybe is generalized. There are Lights Out organizations in cities, but we get calls from people that live in the county and they say, we had a bird strike our window and it's dead. What can I do? We can collect that bird as long as it's in the state of Maryland. And what we do with those birds is that helps us get a better idea of the data, the age of these birds, the species of these birds. We're now at 95 species that we have found in Baltimore City alone.
Wow.
But we can collect data from anywhere in the state of Maryland, even if it's not the physical deceased bird. It is just data. If they just said, hey, I had a common yellow throat hit my window, that helps us and researchers get a better idea as to how many birds are actually hitting windows and what the impact is, no pun intended.
So you want homeowners, commercial building owners to call you if the bird, regardless if the bird has already been disposed of?
Yes, because that helps us get a better idea, better data analysis to get to the bigger picture.
And you definitely need more volunteers to help you walk in migrating season from building to building to building. You're going to find birds, right?
Yes, and not just people that walk. We have all types of volunteers. We have some that just do outreach. So we do fairs and festivals, nature centers, different festivals. We also need volunteers, which is a huge thing, for transporting birds. So once we get the birds downtown and they're injured, we need to transport them to our wildlife rehabilitator. And some of these people may go to work. So anyone that's retired, works from home. We have a wonderful mother. She homeschools her 2 girls, and those lovely 2 girls ride with her to pick up the birds.
And where is your wildlife rehabilitator?
Our wildlife rehabilitator is north of the city. So if anyone that lives in the city or on the outskirts of the city, it's wonderful. It's at Phoenix Wildlife Center, which is in Phoenix, Maryland.
So need lots of volunteers. Again, what's the website?
Our website is lightsoutbaltimore.org, but we also have a Facebook page that you can like, and it is facebook.com/Save the Baltimore Birds.
And it's not just photos of dead birds.
It is not just photos of dead birds, I promise. Out of 1 out of every 3 birds we find is alive, and we rescue it, and we have a 95% rehab and re-release rate.
That's awesome. That's incredible. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you for having me.
This is Donna Cole. This has been the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.